Hey, what's up? It's Comic95, the Savior. I want to make a video on a very frequently asked question. I've received a few emails and a couple of comments actually on YouTube as well asking me about Tefl Certification. So, if you are not familiar with Tefl Certification, it is essentially a teaching certificate. It requires you to either attend an online class or a class in person in which you will be taught how to teach non-native speakers English. This course is welcome to anyone of any English level. Of course, it is obviously easier for you to follow if you are a native speaker, or at least if you are native fluent with English. It will give you basics on how to control your classroom, how to teach grammar, how to give a demo lesson, basic things like that. Do keep in mind that different schools have different pricing, different hours, different kinds of certifications, etc. But what it all comes down to is, it's the same thing. So the question that everyone wants the answer to is it worth it? Should you get Tefl certification? And can a Tefl certificate take the place of having a bachelor's degree, specifically to teach in Japan? Now, do keep in mind, I unfortunately cannot give you guys advice if you are not planning to teach English in Japan. But from what I've heard and read, and I've heard from people that live here in Japan that have taught in other countries, there are plenty of other countries in which the certification is enough. So, in short, no. Tefl certification is not worth it, and it cannot take the place of a bachelor's degree. So the first thing you need to understand is, in Japan, you do not need a bachelor's degree in anything in order to work here. You do not need to be a teacher at all. You can work in Japan without any experience or any bachelor's degree. So do not be fooled into getting Tefl certification thinking that you need it to get the experience, or even if you see that it is listed as something that is required or favored or wanted on the job description for a specific Japanese school that you're trying to work at. I go into more detail about this on my blog, and I will try to touch on it during this video. So to get back to where I was at, the reason being is, the only reason, it's a catch-22 basically. You need a degree in order to get a visa, and you need a visa in order to get the job. Tefl certification is not going to allow you to get a work visa here, or any visa for that matter. What it can do is, it provides a nice little, decoration on your resume, which is ultimately useless. In Japan, they're not really examining your resume for specific, qualifications. The only thing that can potentially help you get a job over someone else here in Japan is if you actually have these few things. 1, you are a native speaker. 2, you have a bachelor's or a master's degree or higher, specifically in education. Number 3, if you have teaching experience in Japan. These are the only 3 things that will significantly help your resume out here in Japan. Of course, I can go into detail about being attractive and being young and not having children, but that's all a whole nother story. So my point is, do not fall for any type of program that claims it will help you to get a job or that your resume is going to stand out. It will not. There are plenty of people here that do have Tefl certification, including myself. So I am not just speaking from inexperience. I have it myself, and it is totally useless. None of my jobs, none of my employers have ever even commented on it. You will commonly see that job descriptions ask that you have it, but it is not needed. I have worked at jobs that have actually asked and required that their teachers have experience, musical experience. Like they want you to be able to play the piano and guitar. I'm not even kidding. And, have experience with dancing and this, that, and the other. And I'm not just talking about willing to learn. I mean, they wanted you to know how. Of course, upon interviewing and then seeing my resume didn't have it listed, they do not care. They're more concerned about the fact that I was physically attractive, that I was young, and that I was a native English speaker that was also from America, which is the desired country for teachers to come from beyond just being a native speaker. So, my point is, it is not useless. No one will comment on it, and if they do, it doesn't really matter. You will see lots of applicants with the exact same certification that you have. Not to mention the amount of hours that you have trained for vary. You can do a course for as little as 8 hours. You can do one as long as 4,000. The list, goes on, and they're always changing. There's so many different programs. There are tons of scams. All of these schools are not legitimate. A lot of them use, big name universities such as Cambridge and, books and all type of things to try to get your money. They're a complete waste. If you could get Tefl certification over a degree, there would be way more teachers teaching English here in Japan because everybody wants to be a teacher in Japan. But that is probably also why Japan does not accept this over an actual bachelor's degree. It is a visa requirement, not a job requirement. Keep in mind that most of the teachers here in Japan that are teaching English have no experience, are not experts, and do not have relevant degrees, but they are simply white men who are married to Japanese women. I am not in no way, shape, and form encouraging you to have a sham marriage, but I'm just being real. That's most of what exists here, and that's also why a lot of the teachers here are not very good, because they're not experienced, they're not serious about their job. It's unfair. I don't agree with the way that, hiring is done entirely. I'm simply explaining the rules. I do not make them. So, if you are getting Tefl certification or thinking that because you have this under your belt that you are going to get a job, you're wasting your time and playing yourself. The way that these companies make their money is they pry on people like you. They look for people who are desperately trying to come to Japan. People that don't have degrees, people that are young, that are poor, and they're like, hey, I can't afford, to go to college and earn my bachelor's degree, or maybe you don't have time, you have children, you're working a full-time job, there's no way you could fit in school, but everybody can fit in 8 hours, or everyone can make time on the weekend, or maybe you're like, oh, I can get my foot in the door, I'll do my Tefl certification in Japan, I'll definitely get a job if I do it in Japan. Wrong. You are going to be in for a surprise because nobody is going to hire you once again unless you already have a work visa through other means, such as a spouse visa or, a student visa in which you can work part-time. You cannot get a work visa from having Tefl certification, and you will not get hired. Lots and lots of applicants apply to jobs every single day here in Japan having no bachelor's degree and having, a Tefl certificate, and these applications simply get trashed. You will not get called back, and once they find out that this is all you have, they will explain to you that a bachelor's degree is a minimum requirement. So do keep that in mind. If you are going to take this and you don't already have it, save yourself the time, the trouble, and the money. If you do currently have it, don't feel bad. I personally took the course myself. It's not entirely a waste per se. It does teach you a lot of stuff. It can be, how can I put it, very helpful for people who do not have any prior teaching experience. But ultimately, even then, I personally don't see it as entirely worth it if you have a means of getting experience otherwise, such as volunteering, something that's entirely free, or accepting a lower, wage, a low-paying job in exchange for obviously building your resume and gaining experience. So I would not waste my time and their money getting Tefl certification. It doesn't matter what school, what they claim, it is a lie. Don't take my word for it. I will put the links in the description. You can look at what the immigration website says. While it doesn't specifically mention anything about Tefl certification, it clearly specifies that you need at least a bachelor's degree. Now, to leave this video on a little bit of a higher note, of course, there are other ways for you to teach in Japan. As I said, your best bet is to get a student visa and to come in as a college student. And thus, you will be doing something very valuable. You will kill, as I said in another comment to another person, you'll kill, 2 birds or 3 birds with 1 stone, whatever. I kind of changed the, the saying. I'm going to say 3. The first one is, obviously, you get to skip the process and you get to move to Japan much faster. You get to experience life here, culture, shopping, partying, gaming, etc. without having to wait until you finish school in your home country. Number 2, the second thing is you're doing something really cool and valuable. You're accomplishing a really big goal and dream for many people, and possibly you too. You're earning your bachelor's degree. It's not a waste. You can use your bachelor's degree both in Japan as well as anywhere else in the world, including your home country. So don't see it as a waste. It's an investment for yourself and your future should you choose to go home or choose to stay in Japan. And number 3, in the meantime, while you're here earning your degree, you will also increase your cultural knowledge as well as your language ability while you're here in Japan. So there's so much value to choosing to get a student visa and coming to Japan that way. If you're saying, oh, I can't afford college, it's too expensive, consider using financial aid. You can get financial aid to attend a university here in Japan as well as a language school. I highly recommend a university because same thing with the language school. Once you run its course, it's not going to give you the ability to get a work visa. Speaking Japanese is not enough alone. There is a new visa program that is being implemented in the spring of 2019, which I believe is only going to be available specifically or in favor of 8 Asian countries, mostly countries that are in South and West Asia, as well as one East Asian country, being China. So this might be an option for you if you are not a native speaker to come to Japan. While it won't help you with teaching English, it is a way to get your foot in the door to come to Japan, and you could even potentially stay here long term. Depending on your ability to speak Japanese, you do have to have Japanese proficiency, I believe at a JLPT N4 level, which is basically conversational Japanese. So that is definitely an option for you if you want to come to Japan and you do not have a degree. The reality is, I was just like you. I spent so much time looking up Tefl Certification, seeing if I could use that instead of, having a degree and coming here for school. And I couldn't really find a clear answer, even from these schools. Instead, the answers that they give you are generally very generic because they want your money. They will insist that this is what, most schools are requiring, and that the applicant pool is swamped, and that you have to stand out with a Tefl certificate. It's a load of crap. If you want to stand out with a Tefl certificate, have a bachelor's degree or master's or doctorate in education. That's how you'll stand out, and be a native speaker that is actually born and raised in America. And yeah, that's something that you probably can't change if you're not already an American. But if you are, thumbs up for you, you're super lucky. So keep that in mind before you decide to sign up for any of these, schools. A lot of them are scams, a lot of them are legitimate, but they're basically preying, once again, on people who are non-native English speakers. Forgot to mention that, as well as people who, are native speakers, but do not have teaching experience and or do not have a bachelor's degree. And let me touch on the subject of non-native English speakers. So a lot of people who do not speak English at a native level, you've pretty much been convinced by these companies that you have to have Tefl certification in order for you to be taken seriously. They convince you that by having this certificate, it will put you, on par with a native speaker. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Japanese schools aren't concerned about your teaching ability. Teaching in Japan is actually fairly easy. They don't really require, most schools don't really require you to teach your own lessons per se. You're generally following a workbook, literally. You're just supervising kids with the workbook, holding up flashcards. What's this? It's a cat. Very simple type stuff that anyone can do. And even for the harder levels, you generally have both a CD, a workbook that has the answers in it. So there's not so much done on your own. The hardest parts that, of course, going to this course can help you with, depending on what course you take and where, and how much money you're willing to spend. It can give you skills with how to, classroom management, how to control the kids, how to control your temper, and of course how to, do a little bit of lesson planning. But the thing is, as a non-native speaker, you are convinced that you need this course in order to show that you're serious, that you mean serious business, that you're a good teacher, that you know how to teach English, and that is not what they're looking for. They want native speaking accents, and this is something that you cannot get from Tefl certification course. It is a lie. It's a waste of time. If you're planning to teach in another Asian country with, Asian speakers, which you might be from yourself if you're a non-native speaker, then this course might be worth it. But if you are trying to come to Japan, it is a total waste of money, total waste of time. You can find volunteer opportunities that are 100% free, in which you don't have to invest anything. Generally, Tefl courses cost a minimum of about $200, and they can be as much as $4,000, depending on how many hours you do the course for. Don't get me wrong, legitimate universities actually offer Tefl certification. And again, it's nice just to have the certificate, but it's not worth it, it's not useful, and your employer will probably never comment on it like mine has not. And I am a native speaker, but they don't care. They've never commented on it, it has never gotten me a job over someone else, and once again, you see them all the time. Currently at my company, I actually help my boss with hiring applicants whenever someone does quit, which happens pretty frequently. And with that said and done, almost all of the applicants that we see, I won't say all of them, maybe about 60% of them do have Tefl certification. And with that said and done, that's a pretty high number of applicants. So having Tefl certification is not going to make one stand out over the other, but what does draw our attention is when we have someone that is from America or even the United Kingdom. That is obviously something that is going to give you a boost ahead. Or of course, if you actually have a relevant degree. Most of the people in Japan that are teaching English do not have a bachelor's degree, and when they do, it is in a field in which it is difficult to get work in their home country, which is part of why they probably came here in the first place. For example, having a degree in something that deals with electronics or media, film, video, things like that, things that are, a saturated field. So basically, like I said, it is not going to help you if you are a non-native speaker. They care about your accent, your country of origin, and you having a bachelor's degree. There's no way of going around this. However, I'm going to contradict what I just said. There are a few options, which of course is having a student visa. Come here for, language school, come here for college, which is the one I recommend because it is a gateway to get yourself a work visa. This is how I came to Japan and how I became a teacher. I used to be just like you, sitting behind a screen looking at Tefl courses and wondering if it was worth it. I personally took a course that was entirely free, thankfully, but this is not the case for most people. And number two, if you have a Japanese spouse. Your spouse can sponsor your visa, thus you don't have to worry about, the requirement of having a bachelor's degree. Of course, you may still have difficulty finding a job in some situations because, once again, native speakers are still preferred, and people that have relevant experience and a relevant degree are going to get the job over you. And then number three, you can get an entertainment visa. Now these are other means of working in Japan besides teaching. So I'm not talking about to be a teacher, but simply to work in Japan. A lot of people come to Japan on an entertainment visa, which is basically a visa that allows you to work for the entertainment company. There are plenty of foreigners that started off working at Universal Studios, Disney World, things like that. They got married to a Japanese person, voila, visa, now they're working in Japan. So there are means to get here legally, and there's not so legal means that people do, such as having fake marriages, which I most certainly do not support and agree with, but I'm simply stating the facts as to how people make it happen, make it work. If I were you, I highly recommend doing exactly what I did, which is simply coming to Japan as a college student. If you think that you cannot afford it, once again, remember there are tons of scholarships that both your school and your home country can offer to help you get abroad here, as well as Japanese schools that offer scholarships. They're generally very easy. You just have to write an essay explaining why you want to come to Japan and what you plan to do after you graduate. They offer lots of scholarships and discounts if you plan to be a teacher. That is, something that obviously you're going to be doing if you come to Japan. So keep these things in mind. You can take out a plus loan, which is basically a government loan, both subsidized and unsubsidized loans, as well as regular student loans. Consider building your credit. Work a few part-time jobs. Save up money. You don't have to be filthy rich to get your foot in the door. You only have to prove that you have $30,000 in assets. So this can be through a combination of things: credit cards, savings accounts, your current your checking account that you have, your loans, all of that stuff combined. That's exactly how I came here. It sounds like a lot of money, but you can literally do this in just about 1 to 2 years. The time that you're spending sitting at home and crying and moping about how you want to come to Japan, but you're not a native speaker, or you don't have the money, you're too poor, you can be putting all of that energy into working a few jobs, saving up money every month, and before you know it, it will be 2020, it will be 2022, or whatever year, and now you can be here in Japan. You're not getting anything done by just watching other people that live and work in Japan online on YouTube. Don't feel mad, don't be jealous, don't feel like, oh, it's not fair. Do something about it. Get yourself a degree and join us. So, that's that. I hope I answered your question. I'll restate it again. Tefl certification cannot take the place of a bachelor's degree. It is not worth it, in my opinion. You can read in more detail about this on my blog, about how employers see it and why they ask for it, etc. I go in much more detail on my blog post. I will link it down below. Again, keep that in mind. You don't need Tefl certification to teach in Japan, especially if you already have a degree. Don't believe that either. They try to convince you that you need to brush up your skills, and you do not need it in order to get a job here, such as getting a visa. It will not help you get a visa. It will not really improve your chances of getting a job, and it is basically just a nice little decorative thing to add to your resume. If you don't have the money for the course, I would not take it. If you can afford it, you have the time, you have the patience, you just want to try it out, go for it. If you're thinking that this is your, gateway into getting into Japan, the cheap, quick, and easy way without having to, actually go to school and pay for a real bachelor's degree, you are only fooling yourself, because this is not going to help you for Japan, but it might help you for another country such as Vietnam. I'm in no way, shape, or form being paid or affiliated with any company. I'm not trying to bash any specific company. I'm simply giving you real advice from my own personal experience as someone who was also in your shoes, who used to not have a degree, who used to not have Tefl certification. I am telling you what I personally did. I currently have a bachelor's degree in education, and I currently have Tefl certification, and I can tell you firsthand it did not help me at all in Japan. So, that's that. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below, or feel free to send me an email. Please follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and I hope you'll watch another video. Bye!